All right, so wingers. Now, the NHL, NHL.com, who brought out their list of best defensemen the same day I brought out mine, then did their list of wingers before I'm doing mine. So I did my list, and then I looked at theirs. And I went, all right, so they're close. There are only three players they had in their top 20 that I do not have in mine. So I will explain why they're not on mine. JT Miller, I love JT Miller in Vancouver. I think he had an excellent season. I'm not convinced he's one of the top 20 wingers in the entire National Hockey League right now. I want to be proven wrong. I want this coming season to be a great one for him. Fantastic. I hope I'm wrong on that one. Claude Giroux, I didn't think Giroux overall had a season where I could keep him in the top 20. Now, last year, of course, I had him at 14. And the fact that he had the season that he did and all that is great, but I don't have him in the top 20. I don't think his season was as strong this year as last year. I also they have Tarasenko in the top 20, and I can't. Tarasenko didn't play very much, and now he's out with the same shoulder injury. He's going through surgery. I don't see him being a top 20 winger in the entire National Hockey League going forward. And it's too bad because keep in mind, it was, 3 years ago I was predicting Tarasenko would win a Rocket Richard trophy because I just thought he was the most gifted goal scorer in the National Hockey League, not named Ovechkin. And here we are a few years later, and I don't know what kind of goal scorer he's going to be when he comes back, but I don't see him being anywhere near the level that he was. So those are the three. There's only three that I don't have on my list that the NHL has on theirs. So that tells me that it's a pretty decent list, I guess, or the NHL and yours truly will get it completely wrong. They're not in the same order. They're legit not in the same order. So we'll start off with number 20. And so here's the thing. Max Pacioretty of Vegas scores a lot of goals during the regular season, and then in the postseason, he had his struggles. And for me, when Max Pacioretty isn't scoring goals, I don't think he's as useful as one of the other Vegas Golden Knights players who's on this list, who when he's not scoring goals is still a beast out there. So for me, Pacioretty, there is something to what Montreal fans have said for years that yeah, great guy and everything, but in those big games, and so I had to kind of look at it and say, okay, well, Pacioretty's going to be on the list. I did not have him on the list last year. Just as a note, Pacioretty was not on the list last year. I don't see him here, and I only have last year's list to go off of. Number 20 last year was Arvidsson. Arvidsson's not on the list this year, so it's a tough list, and everybody knows I love Arvidsson. Number 19. I think Patrick Laine is going to end up a lot higher on this list next year. Now, Laine, I will say this too, was not on the list last year. I did not have Patrick Laine on the top 20. Laine's goal scoring now, I think, will be better because he had a better all around year. Pass the puck, seemed like a team first player this year. I thought had an excellent season. And so I would expect that next year he moves up. As I said, I didn't have him in the top 20 last year, and I remember there was some consternation. You would be surprised some of the consternation that happens when you have a list. Number 18. And this is a dive. This is a massive dive. Johnny Gaudreau. Last year I had him at fourth. He had a great year last year, 99 points, and Calgary was the best team in the West. And then this year, Gaudreau at points this year looked, and I don't know if disinterested's the word for it or just something was wrong or what it was, but at points this year, it just wasn't there. That drive that he had the previous season just it wasn't the same. So for me, Johnny Gaudreau, I have him at 18th. He's still in the top 20, but yeah, it was a rough year for him. Very rough year for Johnny Gaudreau. And so yeah, number 18 for Gaudreau. I do expect some debate on that one. Number 17, and I kind of debated myself on this one too. So it's the jersey I'm wearing, and it's another Winnipeg Jet, and it's Blake Wheeler. So I have a Blake Wheeler jersey on, and I like Blake Wheeler. Obviously, I wouldn't be wearing a jersey of a player I didn't like. Why you don't see me running around in Ulf Samuelsson jerseys. Although Samuelsson, to his credit, has been an excellent assistant coach. Gotta throw that out there. Been an excellent assistant coach. As a player on the ice, Anyways, but Blake Wheeler, for me, last year I had Wheeler at 15. This year I have him at 17, roughly about the same. And I had debated about Wheeler, like, well, at this stage in his career, are we going to see some sort of a drop from Wheeler? But I kind of expected that last year, and it didn't really happen. So for Wheeler, just another solid season, just very solid year by year. Excellent numbers put up by Wheeler. Number 16. I don't think I had this guy on the list last year. I didn't. This is where it gets tough. So Jake Gensel, if you take the points and goals he had this year, and if you prorate it over a full season, if not for injury, maybe he's in the top 10. But that's where some of the names on this list get kind of tricky. And this is where, the NHL picking Tarasenko, I get it. But at the same time, well, he played well when he did play. You have to look at Tarasenko's future. For me with Jake Gensel, it's, hey, if this guy can stay healthy, he could get 40 goals. He is playing on the wing for one of the best centers that's ever played the game. And so Jake Gensel is excellent. But does that mean that Gensel's excellent in his own right? Yes. I think the answer is yes. I think Jake Gensel's an excellent winger in his own right. I don't think he needs to be fed the puck by Crosby to get goals. I don't think he needs to be playing with Crosby to get points. I think if he played anywhere else, he would still be an excellent forward. It's one of those things that's really difficult to tell until a guy actually gets away from that star player, right? Number 15. And this is the first one I have that was not in the top 20 for the NHL.com's list. And that's Andrei Svechnikov. Svechnikov was near a point a game this year, 24 goals. And he, I thought, had a great year. And I really did. And Sebastian Aho, who will be in my top 20 centers, obviously, I don't think Svechnikov relies on him either. I think they just have this great relationship between the two of them. And, you have Teravainen, who's not on the list, but honestly, Teuvo Teravainen should be an honorable mention, as is Taylor Hall and Travis Konechny. Konechny was the last one that got cut from this list. And Taylor Hall could end up back on this list next year, depending on how he does in Buffalo. But at this point, I couldn't justify it. Because again, when I look at these lists, I'm doing them up, I say, okay, can I justify having that player above number 20? Which in this case is Max Pacioretty. And so for me, Taylor Hall, I couldn't justify having ahead of Pacioretty. And same with Konechny. But it's close. Like, it is really, really close. Konechny will probably end up on this list next season, I would think. I did not have Konechny on the list last year either. So, let's see. Number 14. Another player who was not on the list for the NHL site. And I'm thinking they forgot him. Because, obviously, Gabriel Landeskog is an excellent winger. He was number 11 last year. Missed some games due to injury, so again, it would be understandable that maybe he flies under the radar. But Landeskog does a little bit of everything. He's a big player, and he is a major part of a Colorado Avalanche team that's being favored to win the Stanley Cup. Landeskog is a solid winger. So again, for me, I have him in the top 20. They don't, and in fact, the three that I have on my list that they don't are all back to back to back. So I have Svechnikov, I have Landeskog, and at 13, I have the one that I really think has finally realized his potential, and that's Kevin Fiala. Kevin Fiala, and it would be understandable if people maybe didn't see him against Vancouver. Maybe they weren't paying a whole lot of attention to the Minnesota Wild as things were getting closer to the break. Just this year in general, Minnesota would be an easy team to overlook. To say, all right, well, I can watch a bunch of games tonight. Well, I'm not going to watch the Wild. That's going to be boring. Kevin Fiala is far and away their best forward. That will change this year in all likelihood with Kaprizov coming in. Rossi may come in as well. And just with the changes made for Minnesota, that equation could change. But Fiala, fantastic. Now, for anybody saying, well, why don't you give Miller that? Miller's older, and it doesn't feel like Miller's production is as sustainable as Fiala's with Minnesota. Fiala's an absolute beast. Again, not to say anything negative about JT Miller. Miller had a great year, but Fiala, I really think he's going to be at that next level. So that's the last player on this list that was not on the NHL's list as well. Number 12. He's going to be joined by his brother on this list at some point, and that's Matthew Tkachuk. And I know Matthew Tkachuk is a controversial player, especially I would think if you're an Oilers fan. But Matthew Tkachuk is a solid forward in his own right. It made a big difference when he was not in the lineup against Dallas. Dallas taking out Calgary was an impressive feat by the Stars, but at the same time, when you take a guy like Tkachuk out of the lineup, it really changes the whole makeup of Calgary's top six, and it was hard for them to recover from that. So, for me, Tkachuk is one of the better young forwards in the game, and I can look back on the draft that he was in and say, shucks, gosh darn it, shucks. That's what I said. I said shucks when they passed on him. Number 11. Mikko Rantanen. So Rantanen, I have at number 11. He was number 9 last year, so it's close. Excellent forward. Missed a lot of games with injury. And again, that's where it's easy to kind of underrate players. So maybe I have Rantanen lower because of the injury, because other guys had big seasons and played the whole year. And again, that's when you're making up a list like this, it makes it a little more difficult. But I still think Rantanen's one of the better wingers in the game. Again, you've got Landeskog, you've got Rantanen. McKinnon obviously won't be on this list because he's a center. So, yeah. Now, guys who dropped out, I've already mentioned Arvidsson dropped out, Tarasenko dropped out, Giroux dropped out. At number 10 last year, I had Alex DeBrincat. And boy, what a tumble DeBrincat took this year. Like, huge tumble in the list. He's out, obviously, and it was alarming just how poor his play was at times this year and just could not get the goals he was getting the year before. And the other player who drops out of the top 20 is Leon Draisaitl. Last year, there was a lot of controversy when I did this because Leon Draisaitl I had on the wingers list. People like he's a center. But I pointed out at the time, he played a lot of time with Connor McDavid, and he was more a winger last season than the one we just finished in September. This year, he is a center. He centered his own line for majority of the year, and so I no longer have him on the wingers list. So if you're looking for Draisaitl, you'll have to wait till I do the top centers list, and then complain about where he is on that one. Number 10. Moving up from 17 last year, another Winnipeg Jet. There's a reason I'm wearing a Jets jersey, and that's Kyle Connor. And you look at this board and you can see Laine, Wheeler, Connor. This is why I think Winnipeg is still a contender. If they make the right moves with their blue line, I honestly think Winnipeg is underrated. I'll put them with any forward from Florida is also underrated because that's what happens. But Winnipeg as a team, I think, is underrated. And Kyle Connor showed this year why he is, I still think, better than Patrick Laine. It's an argument I've had for years that I think Connor's the better forward. And, maybe at the end of their careers, people will point back and say, what were you thinking? And they could be right. But I will stick to my guns on that one. I think Connor's the better all-around player than Laine. Even though Laine, I think, had his best year this year. Number 9. And Mitch Marner drops from 5 to 9. He doesn't drop from 5 to 9 because he didn't have a good season. He drops from 5 to 9 because there are just 8 wingers that I thought were better this year. Marner is still every bit as good, I think, as he was when I had him at 5 last year, and it just shows how tough this is to navigate and to figure out, okay, where would I put these guys? Who would I have where? And there was a change as well in how I did the top 4 and who ends up on top there. So I have Marner at number 9. I've talked about this before. I think he gets too much criticism at times. I do agree that he's overpaid by a bit, but you can't get mad at Marner for that. You get mad at a general manager. I always say this, and I'll say it again here. You can't get mad at somebody that you work with because they go into the boss's office and go, hey, can I get a raise of $35 an hour over what I'm making now? And the boss goes, yep. Well, you can get mad at the guy for getting that extra $35 an hour. But really, you should talk to the boss about the fact that he gave the guy too much money. So that's how I see it. I don't get mad at a player. I don't see it as greed. I just think to myself, why would a general manager not negotiate a little tougher? Number 8, one of the more underrated forwards in the league. Now, I know that the popular pick is Barkov, and everybody talks about Barkov. But if we all agree Barkov is underrated, he's not. That's not how that works. If we all collectively go, we love Barkov, he is no longer underrated. But Huberdeau, I think, is. Huberdeau is, on his own, fantastic. And again, if he didn't play in Florida, if he played in a more viewed location, a Canadian location, an original six location in the States, I think he would get a lot more acclaim than what he gets right now. But Huberdeau really has gradually built himself up. Last year, I did not have Huberdeau in the top 20. And I do remember Florida fans asking about that, but I had Arvidsson in the top 20 last year. So, yeah, Huberdeau now for me is in the top 20. Number 7, going with that other Vegas forward I talked about earlier. Mark Stone doesn't need to score goals. Mark Stone doesn't need to score points. Mark Stone does score points. He does score goals, but he is just a really fantastic all-around forward. Stone, I don't see a weakness in his game. You can look. I don't see a weakness in his game. He played the same way in Ottawa. There's no difference between the way he played in Ottawa and the way he plays in Vegas. The difference is in Vegas, they are consistently one of the better teams in the league. And so Stone is getting a lot more attention. Also, Vegas being a team that's high profile. So Stone gets more attention, but he was always one of the better forwards. Last year I had him at 7, so nothing really changes for him. Number 6, and this is a bit of a drop. So Ovechkin had an amazing season, and he drops from 2 to 6, again, because I think there's 5 guys that I would put above him right now. Ovechkin is still the best pure goal scorer in the National Hockey League. Bar none. He is the best pure goal scorer in the league, and the fact that he scores a lot of his goals from the exact same spot, and teams know he's shooting from there, goalies know he's shooting from there, and they still can't defend it, that shows you just how good Ovechkin is. And for me, Ovechkin, I think is one of the better forwards in the game. I just ended up having him at 6 because there's 5 guys I have ahead of him. Number 5, you can start booing now. Get the boos going because he loves this. Number 5 loves being booed. I've seen it firsthand. It's his favorite thing. But Brad Marchand is legit one of the better wingers in the game. I had him at number 8 last year. I have him at number 5 this year. Marchand, shorthanded, 3-on-3 in overtime. The guy's a dynamo. He is capable of taking over a game. He's very strong on the puck. I understand there's a lot of people who don't like him, and I understand why. I've had videos on, there's a whole playlist on this channel of Brad Marchand videos, and some of them, I'm not very happy with Brad Marchand. But the reality is that he is one of the better forwards at taking over the game. Short-handed when he's got the puck, good luck. Good luck getting away from him. You've got Marchand and Bergeron out there short-handed. Boston's fine. He has calmed his game down a lot, I think, from where it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. And so while there's still a lot of reasons for other fans to hate him, there's a reason also why Boston fans enjoy his game and like him. I do not have a Marchand jersey. I'm not going to have a Marchand jersey. That's not happening, but I have to give him his due. I think he's one of the top 5 wingers in the National Hockey League. And we've had discussions at times about how well he's playing and how maybe he'll get a Hart vote here and there, which always causes absolute bewilderment from people that mean maybe they don't watch Boston, or you watch it through a lens that you just hate Marchand so much you don't care what he does. Number 4. This marker's dying, but damn it, I'm almost done, so I'm not throwing it away yet. Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane for me is number 4. I had him at number 1 last year. This is tough. This is tough because I still think Patrick Kane is capable of putting the puck on his stick in front of his own net and then just deciding, okay, that's going in the other net and nobody's going to stop me. And he's one of those few players in the league. Usually they're centers. He's one of the few players in the league who can do that, who can march the puck from one end of the ice to the other. And, it is amazing to watch him play game in and game out. And he is one of the strongest players in the game. Just, he gets that puck on his stick. And again, it's just, good luck getting it off of there. Very, very competitive, very consistent as well. Very, very consistent player. So, yeah, I have Kane at 4 this year. Just, I think there are 3 guys I'd put ahead of him. Number 3, Another Boston. Another Boston winger. David Pastrnak. Pastrnak is known for his goal scoring, rightfully so. Pastrnak may be seen by some as the guy who's going to take over for Ovechkin in terms of getting goals, 50 a year. Maybe. I know that early in the season when he was scoring like a goal a game and people were like, hey, can he get 50 and 50? And I'm like, he's not going to get 50 and 50. Shannon's he's too hard. He can get 50 and 50. I'm like, he's not. And I didn't say it because I didn't believe in pasta. It's just getting 50 goals in 50 games is virtually impossible in today's game. It is so mathematically unfeasible because you can't get there with the way that defenses work, with the fact that teams always have that advanced scouting and they figure out how you're getting all those goals and they find a way to shut it down. But Pastrnak still by the end of the year was one of the best forwards in the game. And I thought that while Boston had a challenging return for the playoffs, and Marchand, who I do have at fifth, he didn't look great at times. Pastrnak generally did. He seemed to be the one that really was competitive right out of the gate and really, really wanted it. So full credit to him. And as long as he can stay healthy, yeah, he should be a 50-goal scorer every year. Number 2. Now, Artemi Panarin was number 1 on the list for the NHL site. He's number 2 on mine. Last year I had Panarin at 13. I had Pastrnak at 12 last year as well. I think Panarin had an amazing season for the New York Rangers. I do. And I think it was fantastic. And I think it was a natural fit for Panarin with the Rangers. It works. And if he can have other seasons like this year, he absolutely is one of the best forwards in the game. And I don't take anything away from him. I think he was a huge part of the reason that the New York Rangers were competitive in that second half. And when they were hot, it was Zibanejad and it was Panarin that were the big driving forces there. And again, I understand why the NHL had Panarin at number 1. And I looked at the reasoning and I went, yeah, that makes some sense. But for me, there's one guy who I thought had redemption this year. And the reality is that Nikita Kucherov, in his redemption arc, it's almost Hollywood-like. So you win 62 games last year, and your team gets thrown out in 4 games against Columbus in round 1. Kucherov was part of the reason that Tampa Bay loses in round 1 against Columbus last year, which is part of the reason why Kucherov was not number 1 on my list last year. This year, even though he scores fewer points per game than last year, in the playoffs, he was their best forward. Big part of the reason why they win the Stanley Cup this year is Nikita Kucherov. There are other reasons you can point to. There are other players you can point to. But Kucherov consistently, game in, game out, game in, game out. And it was funny because during the regular season, I kept seeing people talking about how, well, Kucherov's not as good as he was last year. But I didn't see that. I just saw that he may not have put up the gaudy point totals that he had last year, but he was still over a point a game. And so, for me, Nikita Kucherov proved himself in the playoffs, and that's where you really need to prove yourself, is in the playoffs, as being the best. And I thought Kucherov did that. And I thought for Panarin and the Rangers, they had a bit more of a struggle. So in trying to decide between these top 4, I'll say top 4, because any of these 4, in my eyes, I'll even take a different colored marker because this one's dying. I would say you can make an argument for any of the top 4 as being the top guy. Any of these top 4, you can make the argument could be the number 1 winger in the NHL. It's really, really, it's that tough. And if you want to make an argument for Ovechkin because he's the best goal scorer in NHL history, you can go for that as well. But to me, those top 4, you can make the argument. I go with Kucherov this year. We'll see what happens next year. So Kucherov moves up from last year's ranking, and Kane drops down. But again, those 4, it's tough. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.